all of us want to unlock defenses. So wouldn't it be cool if we just had just one playmaker to choose from, just one role, playmaker, right? And then we just go and choose that, and we know that guy's gonna unlock defenses. But in the game of Football Manager, when it comes to choosing a playmaker, we're left with a few options. Now, how do you decide what playmaker to use? On today's show, we'll take a look at some of these playmakers. My name is Daljit. Welcome to the show. This is the channel where I do shorter form content for the game Football Manager. You'll find tips, tricks, hacks, guides here. I also stream 3 times a week on another channel called Daljit's Moments, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. On Mondays, well, sometimes we do fantasy draft, sometimes we have game night. Other times, well, I go into the game of Football Manager and I take a look at roles and duties. I take a look at different roles and, try and explain how these work. Sometimes I even have, we'll just randomly decide to create some tactic. On Wednesdays, I do a different show called Bring Your Tactics, which is all about you. You bring your tactics, we use a random community save, and we go out there and we try and see whether there's a different way to play with your tactic. And I offer some suggestions. On Fridays, of course, it's my long-term save with Untitled. The Untitled challenge, rather, not with Untitled. He's not here anymore. What am I saying? Oh, so we also have the Forest playthrough there as well. So please join me there when you have the chance. Time for us to jump into the playmaker. Now today, we're going to take a look at the playmakers in the defensive midfield tier. The Roaming Playmaker, the Regista, and the Deep Lying Playmaker. Now, when do you use these playmakers? First up, what are playmakers? They're the creative engines in your team that help you unlock teams. Now, they keep the site ticking, and well, who doesn't want to have a creative influence in their teams? Must a tactic have a playmaker to be successful? Well, no, not really. You can make good tactics without the use of playmakers. We just need to understand how these roles impact your tactics. First up, he's a ball magnet. So only when you can find him with the pass, because that depends on the playmakers of the ball ratings, whether or not you've thought about creating space for him. And sometimes it depends on the formation you're playing against. So let's if you play a 4-2-3-1 and you have a playmaker in the AMC tier, and you're up against a deep 4-2-3-1, which is 2 DMs, then your playmaker, well, if you can find him with the pass, I salute you, because it's not going to be easy. Players look to the playmaker and they try and pass him the ball. So he needs to be in positions where he has options. Without any options, the playmaker has no one to pass the ball to, and your tactic could fall apart. Playmakers can be played on any tier in the game except for the attacking and the defensive tier. Attacking tier, you find strikers. Defensive tier, you find defenders. Now, today's show, I'll talk about the 3 playmakers that you can find in the defensive midfield tier, the Deep Lying Playmaker, Regista, and the Roaming Playmaker. The differences in all these roles depends on their play instructions. The Deep Lying Playmaker is the only role among the 3 that is actually on a lower mentality than the rest. He's also the only one that you have a defend duty for as well. Now, the Deep Lying Playmaker also has a play instruction that says hold position, which means that he is going to be relatively static to the rest of the formation. Sometimes he will break that if you play him on support duty and he has traits, like if he has the trait gets into opposition area, for example, then that Deep Lying Playmaker could find himself in the opponent's third or inside their box. Now that can happen if he has the traits, and perhaps even if you're playing on a very high mentality. Now the Roaming Playmaker, he's the opposite of the Deep Lying Playmaker. He doesn't hold his position and is free to move around the pitch. You can find him supporting defensive and offensive transitions, and he tends to take more chances than the Deep Lying Playmaker, because the Deep Lying Playmaker doesn't have plays more risky passes checked, but the Roaming Playmaker does. So you will find this to be the core difference between the 2 roles. One holds his position, the other doesn't. When we look at the Roaming Playmaker and compare him to the Regista, now there is a big difference between these 2. The Roaming Playmaker is a more physically demanding role. You will see him covering for players. You will see him going from one end of the pitch to the other end of the pitch. You will see him um, dropping into defense to help the team defend. You see him popping up in the final third, linking up play, in affecting attacking transitions in a very attacking way. The Regista, on the other hand, he tends to be a bit more circumspect. He will not be busting a gut to cover for another player. A Regista is more likely to wait for things to unfold, let other players do the hard work of screening the ball, and then he looks for the pass. A roaming playmaker, on the other hand, is expected to be everywhere in defense and in attack. It's a mentally demanding role. A player is expected to contribute towards all phases in play. It's a role that needs a player who has good concentration, work rate, and physical attributes. It's a physically demanding role. This is the reason why, when choosing roles, I don't let the assistant manager play a part. Because you need to understand what happens when you pair these roles together with other roles. If you wanted to play a 4-3-3 with a defensive midfielder, then a Regista is a good choice for the defensive midfielder. But then you would have to have a strong backline, and you would also need players in front of him who can win the ball. This makes a Regista a very popular role for tactics like a 4-1-3-2 narrow, because you've got three midfielders in central midfield being an active screen. You could also use a Regista in a deep 4-2-3-1. Pairing him with a defensive midfielder would probably be the best bet. You won't see the Regista covering the ground like a roaming playmaker, so don't bet on him to quickly move around the pitch, from one end to the other. He will move forward with the team, and he will look to play aggressively as a playmaker from a deeper position. The Regista will need players around him winning the ball. So in a deep 4-2-3-1, you need to think carefully about the roles that surround the Regista. But when you use a roaming playmaker, you have a bit more latitude, because the roaming playmaker does the offensive and the defensive actions relatively well. So in a 4-2-3-1, if you were to use a Regista, well, you need to be a bit more careful with his partner. You have to think of a more defensive partner, like a DM. You could also play, if you wanted a more offensive 4-2-3-1, then you'd be looking at a roaming playmaker with a segundo volante, or maybe a roaming playmaker with another DM, since he works well with other roles. In a 4-2-3-1 flat, like in a regular 4-2-3-1, you can run away with a lot of options. You can play a roaming playmaker with a box-to-box midfielder, since he can do the up and down relatively well. But if you want to create overloads, then perhaps you may be wanting to use a deep lying playmaker, since he holds this position, allowing the wing back to go around him. Maybe you can have an inverted winger dropping deep, and maybe an attacking midfielder. So there are so many options when you're using a pivot. That would be the deep lying playmaker. Now, the Regista, well, he's a very, very specialized role. He works really well in certain situations where you have more players in midfield protecting the area. Then the Regista makes sense. Here, a Regista is a brilliant option, even for a narrow diamond, for example, because you've got wingbacks commanding the flanks. You've got two central midfielders who can protect the half spaces. If you're bold and daring and you think your defenders can handle the defense, then a Regista might push up from a deeper area, looking to release the three potential dangers you have in front. So there are plenty of ways of using all these playmakers, and there's never going to be a right answer or a wrong answer, but you just need to understand what they bring to the table, their weaknesses, especially for the Regista. The Regista has a lot of weaknesses. That doesn't mean that the other roles are necessarily better. It just means that if you want to use a Regista, and I've often used a Regista in a 4-3-3, you just need to know how he works, because you could actually have a very strong player quarterbacking your attack from a very deeper position, making it very hard for him to be marked out of a game. The danger of using a Regista as your sole fulcrum for attacks would be when you're playing against a system that has got an AMC that is running around harrying your defense. Then you might run into some trouble, or a Regista may end up needing to defend, and if he doesn't defend, well, it opens up the space towards your central defenders. These are things that you need to bear in mind when you use all these different roles. There's never ever going to be a perfect answer to these questions, but I'm hoping that by me explaining the differences between these three roles, it makes things easier for you. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's show. Excuse my stumbling speech patterns. If you have any more questions like this, because this video is a direct response to one of the questions asked on the YouTube comments. And I will always pay attention to your questions, and I will always try and do videos that help you understand the game a bit more and, make things easier for you. So you guys, once again, I want to thank you for your support. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Take care, stay safe. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.